It is time for Cuyahoga's Most Wanted. Welcome. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Every week we partner with Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County, as well as the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department, to feature 3 fugitives. These are individuals who are facing serious charges. Some of them have already pleaded guilty and now have broken their probation. We're talking sex offenders, domestic abusers that are out there on our street when they need to be back in front of a judge. Let's welcome in, as we do every week, Detective Red Dyer with the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. Detective, how are you this morning?
Wonderful, Dan. Just ready to help get some of these people off our streets.
Absolutely. And Red, we know this program works. Crime Stoppers gave us some updated statistics last week. About 70% of the fugitives that we feature, whether indirectly or directly, have been caught after being featured on Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County. That tells us this is working. That tells us the community is working to clean up the streets. Why do we do this every week, Red?
Well, Dan, we at Crime Stoppers recognize the value of our community, the eyes and ears that they provide for us. It also opens up the potential for these people to clean up their neighborhoods, help us solve these cases, get justice for these victims, and it opens up the potential to earn a reward, which we'll get into a little later, while remaining completely anonymous.
And that's why this program works, is because Crime Stoppers keeps you 100% anonymous, and we'll get into that. Red, let's get into instead the first of 3 fugitives. This is an individual that as soon as you see him, you'll know that, wow, this is somebody that'll be very recognizable on the street. Let's get to the case of Terrell Foster. What do we know?
Well, Dan, what we know about Mr. Foster is he actually has 2 warrants with the Sheriff's Department. In his first case, he pled guilty to attempted strangulation and domestic violence. According to reports, in 2023, he became irate when arguing with the victim, who was 6 months pregnant at the time. He then gave the victim knives and told them to kill themselves and the baby. He proceeded to then strangle the victim. In his second case, he pled guilty to manner of registering. He's actually required to register as a sex offender with the Sheriff's Department due to a guilty plea in 2019 to attempted unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. Indictments in that case state that he engaged in sexual conduct with a minor under the age of 16. He failed to appear for probation violation hearings in these cases, and warrants were issued for his arrest. He can be identified by his many face and neck tattoos, to include a cross directly on his forehead and a snake across his face. He also has warrants with the Adult Parole Authority for violating his parole, so they'll want to speak to him as well. He's approximately 5'7" and 145 pounds, and was last known to be staying in the 11,000 block of Forest Avenue in the city of Cleveland.
And Red, unfortunately, we see too much of this domestic violence, but against a pregnant woman, 6 months pregnant at the time. You have to ask yourself, well, why would you protect this individual? Why should he be hiding out instead of hanging out in a courtroom? Let's get to our second case, Stephen Bohenlein. What do we know?
Well, Dan, what we know about Mr. Bohenlein is he's also wanted for 2 cases with the Sheriff's Department. In 2014, he pled guilty to attempted gross sexual imposition and is required to register as part of that. Reports in that case state that he sexually touched the victim that was under 6 years of age. It's always deeply troubling to hear about these cases involving children, Dan, and I know how passionate our community feels about protecting our children. He failed to register in that case. In 2024, he pled guilty to failing to register with the Sheriff's Department and was sentenced to probation with a suspended prison sentence. He also has a warrant with Portage County Sheriff for failing to register. He's approximately 5'9" and 185 pounds, and was last known to be staying in the 6,000 block of Stump Road in the city of Middleburg Heights.
Let's get to our third and final case. Joshua Stout, actually wanted by 5 different jurisdictions. Walk us through the case of Mr. Stout.
Well, Dan, according to reports in December of 2023, Strongsville Police and Fire responded to the 19,000 block of Lund Road in Strongsville for a motor vehicle crash with reported injuries. It's alleged that Joshua Stout collided head-on with oncoming traffic while driving with a suspended license. Toxicology reports also indicated the presence of methamphetamines. 2 individuals operating vehicles, Dan, that were struck by Mr. Stout sustained various levels of injury. He failed to appear for court, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. As you mentioned, he also has multiple other warrants, to include Elyria Police for failure to appear, Lorain County for felonious assault with a nationwide pickup radius, 2 failure to appears for child support, Brooklyn, failure to appear for obstruction of official business, and North Olmsted for drug paraphernalia and driving under suspension. He's approximately 5'10" and 150 pounds and was last known to be staying in the 700 block of West River Road in the city of Elyria.
So those are the three fugitives of the week. Cuyahoga's most wanted, you can see, all facing very serious charges, from sex crimes against children to domestic violence against a pregnant woman. That's why we do this, is these individuals are facing serious charges, whether it's probation violations on guilty pleas, failing to register as a sex offender, which is so very important for our community. And now it's time to go out and get them. Red, people don't want to get in trouble. They don't want these three fugitives to know that it was them that turned them in. Why should they not fear? When we say this is anonymous, we mean it.
Well, Dan, as we discuss every week, we don't record the phone calls, we don't take down your name, we don't have any personal identifying information from you. When you call us, we provide you with an anonymous tip number so that information is never exchanged.
And it is that tip number that gives you the anonymity. You use that like a tracking number. Let's say you had a package coming and you have that tracking number. That's exactly how Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County does it. 45 days later, you call in, see if it was your tip that led to an arrest, and you could be eligible for that reward. Red, when we start talking about reward money of up to $5,000, what do you like people to remember?
That crime doesn't pay, but Crime Stoppers does.
Crime Stoppers does, and these tips can help law enforcement all throughout Northeast Ohio and the state. This isn't just a Cuyahoga County program. When you see these people, if they're in Lorain, if they're in Summit County, Stark County, they're going to go get them. Detective Red Dyer, thanks for joining us. Let's keep up that good record of a 70% capture rate. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right, take care. That's going to wrap it up. And to one of those three individuals, if you happen to see this, family member happens to see this, you may want to do the right thing and turn yourself in, because with a 70% capture rate, those walls are going to start closing in. Until next week, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Our 11 o'clock news is underway. Our noon news coming up on Channel 19, where we will have news and our first alert weather. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media @Cleveland 19.